First, Mike Siemens is an award-winning staff photographer with the Morning Sentinel newspaper in Waterville, who, for the past 3 weeks, has been working in Moldova and Ukraine. The Pulitzer Center for Crisis Reporting in Washington, D.C. is sponsoring his work, and his pictures are appearing in USA Today.
Siemens is taking photos that help tell the stories of some of the millions of Ukrainians who have been driven out of their country by war. He puts a human face on the people who have left their homes and their lives behind in search of a safe haven.
There are war photographers covering the destruction, the devastation, the missile strikes, and that's all very important. I don't consider myself to be a war correspondent per se, but the humanitarian crisis unfolding is what I'm focused on. From afar, it just looks like any other disaster, but this one is not a disaster. It's, a man-made, and I mean that singularly, crisis that is just perhaps the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life.
There is heartbreak and human suffering on a scale that is almost impossible to imagine. Nearly 4 million Ukrainians have left their homes, their communities, all they had, and fled to another country. Most of them are women, children, and the elderly. Men between the ages of 18 and 60 are required to stay to defend their country.
I'm sorry, it strikes an emotional chord in me. And, I witnessed an evacuation out of Mykolaiv, I'm going to say 3 days ago. And it was like watching 80 funerals where women and children are saying goodbye to their fathers and their husbands, their boyfriends, with no knowledge that they will ever see them again. And to see it on such a large scale that's happening over and over and over, busload after busload after busload, it's just incomprehensible to fathom.
This is not an assignment that was forced upon you. You didn't have to take it. You wanted to do it. Why did you want to go and tell this story, Mike?
I don't differentiate local news from world news. News is news. I was raised in Maine. My father is a fourth-generation Mainer. So working in Maine means a lot to me, and telling the stories of Mainers means a lot to me. But at the same time, there are so many other issues involved in the world that if you reduce it, comes right back to home. You'd be surprised how many people in Waterville, where I live, have family that are in Odessa. These aren't just strangers on the other side of the world.
Working as a photojournalist in Ukraine now comes with the usual journalistic challenges and an array of new ones.
Like, I just had to get a special credential from the Ukrainian military to be able to operate and work within Ukraine. And the purpose of that is to not divulge strategic locations, offer any sort of intelligence to the Russian army as to where people are.
Mike Siemens is an experienced journalist who has seen more than his share of human suffering and misery. This story, though, is different.
There are certain things that are natural, and emotionally you can cope with it. I covered Ebola, I've covered Katrina, Hurricane Rita. I mean, I've done a lot of natural disasters and, spent 6 months in the back of an ambulance here in Maine with paramedics. These things made sense because they were natural occurrences that you just can't avoid. It's part of life. What's happening now is just not that. Came across a 73-year-old woman who left Mykolaiv after packing, lost power, they got bombed. She's packing her leather suitcase from the Soviet era with all of her belongings by candlelight. And I think, that could be my mother. That's just a story told over and over and over again. So when I'm photographing these events unfold, it's just heartbreaking to a level that you cannot even imagine.
Siemens says he is still processing much of what he has seen, much of which will never makes sense.
There's just no answer. There's no why. And as a journalist, you want to know why. This isn't a hurricane that just rolled through and all of a sudden there's a refugee crisis. This is literally a man-made crisis. And I mean that singularly. There's one man at the helm driving this bus, sending these people on these death marches to God knows where.
Mike Siemens kept emphasizing he didn't want this story to be about him. He wants the focus to be on the displaced Ukrainians and on the aid workers, particularly from the non-governmental organizations who are doing heroic work to help those people. And we've got more information on our News Center Maine website and app about Mike Siemens and his work. And again, the Pulitzer Center for Crisis Reporting and USA Today are paying for his photojournalism in Ukraine. And the Pulitzer Center is a nonprofit that relies on financial support from the public and other donors.
Boy, if ever there was a time when photojournalism just brings that story home, they were such powerful images. One other note, you will also find on our website a list of nonprofit organizations providing humanitarian relief to displaced people in Ukraine and its neighboring countries. And we will be right back.